morning, Salome here, and today we're going to talk about a democracy, what a democracy is, and we're going to talk about Socrates. Socrates was an ancient Greek who was a classical Greek Athenian. He was a citizen of Athenian philosopher. He was credited as one of the founders of Western philosophy and as being the first moral philosopher of the Western ethical tradition of thought. Socrates was to have first-hand catastrophic experience of the foolishness of voters. In 399 BC, and BC means before Christ, means before Jesus Christ, the philosopher was put on trial on trumped-up charges of corrupting the youth of Athens. A jury of 500 Athenians was invited to weigh up the case and decide by a narrow margin that the philosopher was guilty. He was put to death by hemlock in a process which is for thinking people, every bit as tragic as Jesus' condemnation has been for Christians. Socrates' point is that voting in an election is a skill, not a random intuition. And like any skill, it needs to be taught systematically to people. Letting the citizenry vote without an education is as irresponsible as putting them in charge of the boat sailing to Samos in a storm. Now, democracy means demos. Demos means the people. A ghost means leading. And it's called demagoguery. A look. Now, in Plato, the Republic, Socrates talks about a democracy. He hated democracy. And it says with democracy, it says, look, this person here has worked many evils on you. He hurts you, gives you bitter potions, and tells you not to eat and drink whatever you like. He'll never serve you feast of many and verified pleasant things like I will. Do you think the doctor would be able to reply effectively? The true answer, I cause you trouble and go against your desire in order to help you, would cause an uproar among the voters. Don't you think? And that's a quote out of Plato, the Republic. As I said, we always had a republic, never had a democrat form of government. In ancient Greek society, they condemned democracy. And so my question to you is, how did so many Democrats come to this form of thinking when in Plato's The Republic, which is a very, very old book about the Republic or Republican form of government, you have Democrats who actually fight for this form of government, and in Greek times, this form of government was evil. Okay, so let's get back to it. It says, we have forgotten all about Socrates' silent warnings against democracy. We have preferred to think of democracy as a ambiguous good rather than a process that is only ever as effective as the education system that surrounds it. As a result, we have elected many sweet shop owners and very few doctors. Now, in ancient Greek, or in this script, it says that they elected sweet shop owners, and sweet shop owners is a person that smells good, dress good, talks good, but's not there to help anybody. They just look good. And that would be Barack Obama. Barack Obama, everybody was so amazed at his appearance and who he was, and oh, he looks good and this, that, and the third, and he did nothing. We went off on voting on appearance. He did nothing. He came in front of us because he could speak well and he can pronunciate his words well, and we got bamboozled. Okay? Just because a person speaks well, dresses well, and pronounces all their words and can spell good, that doesn't mean that they are good people. So that's what a sweet shop owner was known as in Plato's The Republic. Okay? Around the world, people of all ages are finding reasons to be weary of a democratic government. While the Western world places a high value on democracy today, this wasn't always the case. It never always was the case. Democracy in America, it was never a good form of government. Not even in ancient Greek times. Some of the greatest minds in history of Western civilization had strong critiques of democracy, critiques that we would be idiots to ignore. In the later parts of the Republic, Plato suggests that democracy is one of the later stages in the decline of an ideal state. So democracy is, when democracy develops, you're at a point where the state has declined. That is the end result. So when a democracy takes over, the government has already failed. Policies have already failed. So when you start voting democracy, you might as well vote for an anarchist, because that's the end of the state. The state has basically failed when you get a form of democracy. The idea was big for Plato. Democracy would lead to tyrants. So this says it. Democracy leads to tyrants. Don't we have tyrants for the last 8 years? Did we have tyrants running the government? Yes, we did. Aristotle, for his part, listed democracy as the failed version of the rule by the multitudes. Democracy is the rule of the multitudes. And now, if the multitudes are ignorant and they rule, what kind of government do you think we're going to have? Because only 10% of us are awake and conscious. The multitudes are not conscious. The multitudes are ignorant. And when I say the multitudes, I mean the majority. The majority of people are ignorant. This is why a lot of us use our platforms in YouTube for education, because we want to see things turn around. And a lot of us understand that we have to educate in order to get this to turn around. Okay, so democracy as a failed version of the rule by the multitudes. It's called timocracy. Timocracy. It was called timocracy. And timocracy, ruled by the purported class, or even just a more constitutional form of Republican government, was the ideal kind of rule by many in his mind. He would have seen Athens as an ever-decaying city moving away from its original democratic constitution as laid out by Solon. The idea that democracy is fundamentally flawed even had sponsors and later more liberal thinkers. Voltaire, who supported all the liberal freedoms of speech and religion, told Catherine the Great of Russia that almost nothing great has ever been done in the world. Democracy is the worst form of government except all those other forms. Democracy is the worst form of government. So said Winston Churchill, noted champion of democratic ideas. Any government is only as good as its rulers. In a democracy, this means that the general population must be properly educated to rule themselves. Will the critiques of democracy given from its cradle be acknowledged, or will will we end up like Athens, a democracy in name, but in fact ruled by the unwashed mob. Except by the geniuses and firmness of a single man combating the prejudice of the multitude, and that would be Donald Trump. Now, in Athens, they would always elect doctors over they would always elect doctors because doctors could prescribe and predict the situation. This is why we have Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a doctor. Donald Trump is just following the ancient laws of government. A republic. Plato the Republic. I'm pretty sure he's reading this and he knows when he started his campaign, oh, I'll elect a doctor. Because that's traditional and ancient Republican thought, Western philosophy. Okay? Now, it is important to understand that the democracy in the Athens was much different than the kind we have today. Athens was much closer to the direct democracy than most of would be comfortable with. It was also very restricted. Only 20% of the population ever enfranchised at the same time, all of them free white males over the age 18 with parents who were also citizens. Certain offices had a minimum wealth requirement. See, under democracy, there's a minimum wealth requirement, right? Number 2, the quorum for the assembly was 6,000 citizens. So to increase attendance, slaves in a red dye rope would herd people there from the agora. Anyone caught with red dye on their clothes was fined. Many posts in the government were held by citizens selected at random. Socrates himself held office in the way once and witnessed what amounted to an angry mob illegally putting generals to death on his watch. Then, of course, a jury decided by a slim majority to put him to death on flimsy charges. Plato tells us that a mere 30 votes out of a jury of 500 killed Socrates. Okay. So basically, there is one good knowledge and one evil is ignorance. So if you have an ignorant mob, this is why CNN and NBC needs to keep the masses ignorant. Because in order for a democracy to work, you have to have an ignorant mob. And that's what we got. Mobs. They're protesting, Antifa protesting. That's a mob. You have a bunch of people voting and have no education, but yet and still they think they know. Democracy is evil. It has always been an evil in Western philosophy. So, are you going to vote Republican or Democrat? Are you going to vote for the Republic? Because right now the Republic was dead. Donald Trump is resurrecting the Republic. Are you going to help him? Are you going to stay on the democracy form of government? And you're going to be like Athens in ancient Greek, where democracy plundered the government. So how will you be voting November the 6th? Tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe, Salon B. Have a great day.